And for more perspective on how big an effect Turkey could have on the fight against ISIS, let's bring in CNN military analyst, retired Lieutenant Colonel Francona. Also joining us is Henri Barkey, the Director of the Middle East Programme at the Woodrow Wilson International Centre for Scholars. Thank you both for joining us today. First to Colonel Francona, Turkey hopes to target ISIS targets in Syria in a way which would create natural safe zones for Syrian refugees. Does that to you seem feasible? And if so, how would they achieve it?
It would be very, very difficult for them to do this. First of all, that they could not do this only from the air. So they'd have to commit sizable ground forces, and as Nick said, tens of thousands, probably more than 50,000 troops to do what they want to do. And they're going to have to push into Syria. And I know why they want to do this. They want to get the refugees out of Turkey back into Syria. That's all well and good. But the areas in which they want to push into northern Syria are occupied by the Kurds. So they'll be taking on the Kurds, and I'm not sure that the Kurds are going to welcome this. So we've got several things operating here. You've got the Syrians, you've got the Kurds, and you've got the Turks. So if they're going to do this, it's going to be a major operation.
Very, very complicated indeed. And of course, there is a tentative deal for the US coalition to access Turkish air bases. What could that mean in the fight against ISIS?
Yeah, I think this is a real game changer, and this is very important. Right now, they've said we're going to have access to Incirlik Air Base, which is just north of Syria, about 60 miles from the border. It's a sprawling NATO facility built to U.S. standards. We've used it for years. It's a great operational location. It would give us the ability to get to targets much faster with more munitions, less refuelings. It would just change the operational dynamic there dramatically. Give you an example. If you wanted to bomb, say, a target near El Raqqa, it's 200 miles from Incirlik. It's 800 miles from the Gulf bases. So you could get there in a matter of minutes rather than a matter of hours. So it really would change the situation for the air campaign.
So a significant development there. Let's go to Henri now. And the war against ISIS has been going on for around a year, but only now is Turkey really getting involved. Was the ISIS attack on Syria the catalyst for this involvement?
No, I actually think the decision to join the coalition was taken before the attack. There was a delegation of high-ranking Americans 2 weeks ago, and that's when the decision was taken. The reason the Turks changed their mind is very simple. The U.S. relations with the United States were really deteriorating because of this. Two, the American military now had a direct alliance with the Syrian Kurds, where the Syrian Kurds, the only group that managed to inflict damage to ISIS and the Islamic State, were the Syrian Kurds. So now you had a deepening of the relationship between the United States and the Syrian Kurds, which the Turks see as a threat to them. And thirdly, I think they finally realized that ISIS now has a very, very deep infrastructure within Turkey that can be used against Turkey anytime ISIS decides to do so. So it is time to take down that infrastructure. The bombing in Suruc the other day actually made it so much easier for the Turkish government to announce the decision, because there would be opposition from certain elements in Turkey who did not want Turkey to be involved with the United States and in Syria.
Can you just elaborate on why Turkey finds the Kurdish Workers Party such a threat?
Well, you see, Kurds live in Turkey, in Iran, in Iraq, and in Syria. So geography has not been kind to them. So in each of these countries, you've had indigenous Kurdish groups that have risen up. In northern Iraq, we have the Kurdistan Regional Government that's recognized by everybody, including Turkey. But in Turkey, the PKK, the Kurdish Workers Party, has been engaged in a war against the state since 1984. The irony is that 2 years ago, the relationship between the PKK and the government had improved. They were negotiating, they were having peace negotiations. But I think the Turkish government had a very bitter election campaign, which they lost. And now they're looking for reasons to have another election. And part of the reason why you have an escalation of tensions with the PKK in Turkey has to do with domestic political considerations. But also the PKK did some really very stupid things this week, like they killed 2 policemen in cold blood, which really rightly angered the Turks. So you've had escalation on both sides. and each side has its own calculation. The Syrian Kurds are not part of, are an offshoot of the PKK, but they're independent. The Turks consider them as terrorists, but the United States doesn't, and that's why the United States essentially has an alliance with them.
And on that point, let's go back to Colonel Francona. We know that Turkey is now carrying out airstrikes on Kurdish militants in northern Iraq. How murky is this fight against ISIS going to become when you've got Turkey fighting against the Kurdish Workers Party who are also trying to fight against ISIS?
Yeah, that's going to be real complicated because the Turks are going to operate in Turkey's national interest, of course. And we know that they want to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. They also want to secure that border. They want to, and they're taking on ISIS. But we see them conducting these operations not only in Turkey, the massive arrest that Henri mentioned, but also what's going on in northern Iraq, striking targets there. So I think they're going to take advantage of this newfound friendship with the Americans to mask some of these operations that they want to carry out anyway. It's going to get really complicated in that airspace.
No doubt at all. Gentlemen, we really appreciate your time today. Colonel Rick Francona and Henri Barkey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.